This piece is called In Case of Fire Help, and I believe it's the most recent piece I've done. And this is about community. I painted this one specifically for a show here at the Lava Center, with the question being asked, what does community mean to you? And I felt like this year, it's been a crazy year. 2020 has been, as everybody knows, like just odd. It's sometimes been pretty rough, and yet at the same time, I was really struck throughout the year, time and again, by people in the community. They were helping each other. People were, sharing toilet paper and going out of their way to help neighbors, going out of their way to make each other safe, to make sure people had food. Food was a big thing. It was hard to get food at certain times throughout the year, especially for many people that were suddenly programs were shut down or they didn't have access to transportation. I mean, there was all kinds of factors that were really putting people into harder times, and yet so many people came through and reached out to help each other. I was really struck by being around the food issue. I remember grocery stores, the larger chain grocery stores, running out of so many products that you would assume would be there. And yet you could go to the little farm stands, you could go to the local, farmers with the little stores and find milk, bread, produce. It was pretty amazing. And so that's why I included in here the fruit and vegetables section. And that is actually coming out of a fire hose, but the firefighters, the police, through this time where everybody else was trying to not come out of their houses, these people had to interact anyway. There was emergencies they had to attend to. They had to put their safety at risk. They did it anyway, as well as the hospital workers, the military. So that's why these figures are all represented here. The essential workers, as we've come to call them. And I mean, down to grocery store employees and McDonald's workers, the people that were providing food at a time when everybody else was sheltering. And, I think it's easy to take all those people for granted until suddenly we really need them. And so that's why they're included here. This is the hospital, because for so many reasons, the hospital, I feel like, it employs so many people here in Greenfield. It's sort of been a long time place of not only employment, but safety. You go there if you're sick, you go there for care. My last two children, both my daughters were born there, so it does have a sentimental spot for me. And my husband works there. Many of my friends work there. But so that's why I started depicting it, because when I was coming up with the idea, I was on Poet Seat Tower, which this is Poet Seat, and I was looking down, and that's what I was seeing from that view, looking down on Greenfield. I have the little fire section in the back has a whole lot of meanings behind it. One meaning is that as we have, downtown has been struggling. The stores downtown, the businesses downtown have been struggling because of the whole COVID era. Business has been either closed or slow. And so the struggle, the fire is representing the struggle of the businesses. Unfortunately, many businesses, not just in Greenfield, but all over the country, have gone under. We've lost so many businesses to COVID. But it also represents, just as I was starting this painting, actually, there was multiple events going on. There was the fires in California that were going on, which I have many friends and family out in California. And, it was a major fear. Many of them had to leave their houses and lost pets, livestock, that kind of thing. It was sort of unheard of, and nobody seemed to be able to get a handle on it. And so that was going on at the time of painting this painting, as well as we had the protests going on across the country. And yes, you had many fires, you had many buildings burning, or towns being just really thrown into chaos. And people I think will probably debate that year and the protests for years and years to come in terms of, the why and the how and the who. But the reality of it is that the protests originally started, as we all know, due to violence, deaths that didn't need to happen, and due to racism. And so that the burning buildings also are representing the burning, the literal burning and the metaphorical burning of racism. And that's also, I think, leading, as bad as things have been throughout the year, as bad as some things like people's deaths have been throughout the year, there's also been this sort of spiritual answer or spiritual exploration in terms of the why and the how. What do we do? How do we handle this? What do we do next? Everything seems to be, chaos. What do we do? And so that's why I have all these spiritual leaders in the painting, and they're my personal sort of people that I have learned from, or who I look up to, who I really admire. But I think probably are not only, the whole world has so many of them, and I think each person needs to sort of find their own spiritual teachers. But they're, with all this sort of hate going on and all the chaos and all the sadness that's going on, there are these really powerful, wonderful people who are reaching out. And so that's why I wanted to represent some of them. This is Candace Nadine Breen. She is a minister who I heard speak at a church I attend, the Spiritualist National Alliance over in Montague. And she's a very powerful speaker. She has just wonderful ideas. She's a really strong woman that has stood through, all kinds, especially this year. I've been hearing her responses to things that are going on in her community. And, she's a voice that needs to be heard. And I was really lucky to have met her through the church. And what she had to say and her message, she has a very metaphysical background. And it just really gave me so much hope. And so I represented her on the crow because the crow is a symbol of transformation and change. Actually, could be actually a raven. I call it a crow a lot, but I think it might be a raven in terms of, this is why I call my paintings intuitive too, because sometimes I paint things that I don't necessarily understand, and then somebody else looks at it and it's actually for them, and they understand it. Like for her she has connections with ravens, and so that's probably why it came through as her on a raven. It represents change and transformation. She's carrying a heart in her hand as a message of love, strength and love. And these other figures, this is Andrea Krozik, and she is a Catholic priest, which many people ask, how could a woman be a Catholic priest? But there actually is. That is possible. There's a group called the Reformed Catholics, which I learned about through her. And they are Catholic, but they don't follow the rules. And so they do things like ordain, they'll have ordained women as priests and things like that. But she's a person who has dedicated her life to passing on teachings of love and sort of righting the wrongs of religions. I feel like she's sort of a truth speaker. And I think people in religion, I think often, for me, religion and spirituality are very different. Religion has often gotten a bad name. It can be a little scary to some people because it's unfortunately been either violent or rigid or excluding certain groups of people. And so it's nice when there are spiritual leaders like her that are sort of bringing people back in and changing that message. And that's why I included her. I really enjoy what she's doing as a spiritual leader. Next to her is His Holiness the 33rd, who is actually the teacher for this person, Temple Lama. So His Holiness the 33rd is a Bon tradition Buddhist monk, and he's the sort of tradition in the bone beliefs is that you are connected. If you have a teacher, you're connected to their teacher and their teacher and their teacher. And this person, Temple Lama, he has written many books. He heads a temple. It's a group. It's sort of a whole. I would call it almost even a school. But there's a place in Pennsylvania where he lives. He's been doing this in Pennsylvania, I believe, for about 20 or 30 years, I think. I'd have to look that up to double check. But he has been a Buddhist monk since he started training when he was 4. But I follow him. I watch him every Tuesday night. He's online from Pennsylvania. He does these free lectures, or teachings, which I love that it's free, because there's just such a I don't know, a way about him that it's it's the real deal. Like you know he's not one of those big church spiritual leaders that's asking for 20% of your income, or it's completely not about that. He's all about passing on this teaching, and it's so big that it'd be hard to describe in a few sentences what his message is. But I'm often struck by, in such a short time, I met him in Northampton many years back, but it wasn't until years after that I really started understanding the message. And so since then, I've been, listening to him. There's the basic stuff like meditation and things like that, addressing ego, and there's just so many levels to it. But on top of that, I feel like his message of connection really is one of the main reasons I included him in this, because he doesn't give an exclusionary message. He include anybody can. You don't have to be bone tradition Buddhist. You don't have to even be Buddhist. You don't have to be anything. This is a message for everybody. Everybody can learn from his message. It's a message of love, and it really includes everybody. And that's this person on the end. His name is Dr. Bruce Bynum. Edward Bruce Bynum is his whole name, but he goes by Bruce. I have known him for many years. My mom worked with him for decades, and so that's how I got connected with him. I actually illustrated, my first book illustration was his first book that I illustrated for him. He is a local author. He worked at UMass for decades, and he gives a lot of talks locally in the area. He's such a great source of wisdom. He knows so much that he sort of strikes me as a person that's on another level, that, I feel like a lot of people are sort of existing in this realm, and he's kind of up here. And he's just such, like I said, he's got so much knowledge. I was lucky enough to actually work with him at it's called the Band Center over in Amherst, doing therapy. And so he was wonderful to watch there, his techniques. But he focuses a lot on concepts, spiritual concepts, but also ideas that, like yoga, things like that. He's really integrating the physical realm and the spiritual realm in his practice and in his writings and things like that. His last work was actually poetry, but he also had written a lot of psychology books. He's written a lot of books on things like African American history in psychology, and exploring topics that not a lot of people have explored. So his work is really fascinating. But there's a little finch in the background. There's leaves around them, and that's still incorporating nature, their connection to nature. This little dove is like a spirit bird, but representing peace. And they're sort of representing all religions as well. There's nobody coming from any one, and they're not all coming from one perspective. There's this is a Jewish symbol. You've got pagans represented. You've got Catholics represented. You've got Buddhists represented. None of these people teach that their way is right. They all come from a really open perspective. That's another thing I really love about them. But that piece in a nutshell is that community is about love and about teaching, about learning, and about being open.